Hi, this is Peter Teuscher. I'm here with Tobi Dempker. Thanks for joining us for another podcast where we pick a topic and see where the conversation takes us. We talk about personal, professional, and business development, as well as a little bit of philosophy. So hopefully there will be a topic that's interesting for everyone listening. So, Tobi, how are things in Uppsala, Sweden?
In Uppsala, we're doing good. I had
Excellent.
my second vaccine shot what was it, Monday, and yeah, a few days ago, and the day after, I was really, really kind of sick. But after 24 hours, I'm back to normal, and
Okay.
yeah, it just feels great to be back on track again. So
Yeah.
very
So
happy. Yeah,
life, more normal for you now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Was
No obstacles.
excellent. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to being able to look people in the eye and be able to interact with them live. So, I had one live coaching session this week where we met up and, it's just, there's just so much. It's just the interaction just feels more natural and
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm also looking forward to hopefully maybe next year once we get to travel again, maybe we even do some workshops together with people. That would be great.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I just came back from this business meeting, right, for 2 days, where for the first time in 1.5 year, all of us, I mean, every person in the room had the same experience. Now, we haven't been in a meeting room with this many people. How do you interact? How do you say hi? Do you shake hands? What do you do? It was great. It was really fun to see, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the same experience. It was like, the fist bump or the handshake or the, just not, actually there's one or two people have taken on the Asian bow, and which,
No.
which feels culturally odd for me, although I'd be happy to adopt it.
Mm.
But yeah, so anyway, we're all going through some interesting changes. It'll be yeah, I'm curious to see what the future has in store, and that's not a very funny way to introduce our topic, but curiosity is the thing that I really wanted to talk about today,
Yeah.
in many different aspects, from how important it is for our learning and for our happiness, and I'm gonna get into some reasons why that is. But what about you? What do you think about our topic for today?
I just when you mentioned that now, I felt like when we're starting this conversation, it feels like our mood is a little bit better than usual, maybe. And I just think it's, when you think about curiosity and what it means, and it's putting on a little bit of a curious mindset to things. It's just, I don't know, it makes me happy and interested in things. So that's an interesting starting point, I think. Just a
It's
little bit of reflection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that the word curiosity prompts positive emotions. Um,
Ah, sure.
it does in me for sure.
Mm,
So yeah, hopefully it does for our listeners as well. So I guess the one thing that kind of prompted me on this topic was, I was listening to a talk and about neurobiology, and they were talking about the ventral styrum, which is kind of, it's a part of the brain that is all about this. It's like our seeking system, is what they referred to it as. So
hmm
it's especially very active in children, and part of the reason they have a short attention span is they're constantly curious to, for new stimuli and so
mm,
on. And apparently over time we can be conditioned to kind of deactivate, or at least tone down that response, because that part of your brain is what helps you become familiar with your environment and learn how to manipulate it and interact with it and so on. So when we are doing things, as we kind of go through life, we become more and more habitual. Um, Joe, this, is his first name Joe Dispenza?
hmm
He talks a lot about how, once you get to 35, more than 80% of your behaviors are habitual and therefore unconscious and just basically automated, and
mm,
so there's less need for that curiosity. And so I think on curiosity is so important on many different levels, and especially just being aware that the more you are conditioned to do things certain ways, the more you need to work at being curious and approaching the world with curiosity. And so there's a ton of topics I want to cover on this today, but I just want to hand over to you and see what's your experience with curiosity. How do you work with it with your clients, or how do you experience it in everyday life?
Yeah, well, could I start from, because you just prompted me with a thought there. So, curiosity, is that a characteristic, a persona, or a personality characteristic that you have, or is it a trait, something that you can just switch on? I'm I was thinking about that this morning. Is that something that you just have, or is it something that you can develop, or is it something that you can choose when to use it, etc.? Um, because if you to in reflecting on what you just said, if you're a child or an adult or over 35 or whatever, I if I'm being a bit personal, I was thinking when I was a kid, I wanted to be curious, and I think I consciously was thinking about it's fun to be curious, because things happen. If I push that button, what's going to happen then? And it was kind of it's involved with excitement, etc. And now I I'm obviously over 35, so those habits might be in
Oh,
place.
not me.
Yeah, lucky you. But so
I'm
now
well
it's
over
more of
35.
it feels like much more of a mindset, something that I can choose to be at certain points. I can choose to be curious when I want to, and I feel energetic or whatever. Is it a personality trait? I'm not sure.
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I think based on the neurobiology, it's obviously it's a biological trait. It's something
Hmm.
that it's endogenous, so it's within us. And it sounds like from the research or the things that I've looked into that it's something like it's a motivator. It can be a motivator, and I think it's also um, so it's a naturally occurring phenomenon. And it's a driver to our
Hmm.
behavior.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's also a mindset and a state. So there's a number of different ways of looking at it, but it definitely there is a biological drive to be curious in order to learn and grow,
Hmm.
and I guess that diminishes over time, based on our conditioning, and that conditioning piece is something I really want to address today.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so does it always diminish then? I mean, I can
Nope,
obviously, I if we're just being general here, I think, yeah, sure, kids are much more curious than
naturally,
adults,
yeah.
naturally.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is that, well, we don't have to go into the reasons why that is, but then as we get older, does that need decrease, or is it something that we have to work harder on to nourish, or because I think it's really motivating and inspiring when you see older people, say older than, let's just pick a number, older than 70, that are really attributing these kind of curious behaviors of wanting to learn new stuff and take on new challenges. It's really inspiring and motivating and maybe hopeful. This is you can always keep finding new interesting stuff to do, finding new knowledge, etc. Right? Which is great.
Absolutely. I think, especially for people in their later years, staying curious and being willing to learn is a big factor. From what I understand, I'm not a medical professional, and so there's certain things about why we're curious and the biological side of it that we can't speak to. But I'd say there are definitely indicators that the more we continue to learn and grow, which is naturally driven by curiosity, the more we can diminish the effects of things like dementia and Alzheimer's, which is reaching
Mm.
very high levels in our elderly population. So that's why I think people are encouraged to continue to try and do things like learn new languages or just some kind of mental stimulus. And I think you will have more enjoyment if you're doing things out of well, I should be doing this, and so you go through the motions. But if you let curiosity lead you, I think you'll have a lot more fun when you do it, and you'll be a lot more engaged.
Mm. Yeah, and just gaining experiences, adding breadth or width to life as well. Um, and I was thinking what it means for not only for personal growth, but for satisfaction, personal satisfaction, what it means to be curious. And in my example, I was when I was studying in Taiwan many years ago. Then obviously I was learning Chinese there, and in classes we used to learn or read news articles, so we would understand what was happening in Taiwan, but also understanding, how do you express that in terms of language. And then taking that knowledge and in every conversation you had, just you had topics that you can talk about, so you could learn much more about the culture, the state of affairs, everything in the context of Taiwan, as well as learning the language. So every time I get into a cab or something, started talking to the cab driver about this and this issue, and it becomes a really developing conversation. So
Yeah.
that curiosity just triggered so much knowledge and then more interest and then relations. So it's so many. I could directly see so many positive side effects by it,
Yeah,
which is
and
fantastic.
I think that's a good place to to start with. I think one of the things that I found was really important. We've talked about flow a few times, and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work, and he talks about that a lot, both in his book Flow, but also in The Evolving Self,
Mm,
about how curiosity is a really important element of flow, the flow state. And
mm,
the one of the major benefits of the flow state is happiness, right? So when people are curious and they're engaged, so it's about being concentrated and focused, but being driven by your curiosity. That really helps put you in a flow state. And then so that's why when I say being curious will help you be happier. And even though the word itself makes us feel happy, just being curious and being interested about learning new things and growing, and when you sort of look internally at how that makes you feel, that it creates a lot of happiness. But it
mm,
also, just the satisfaction of, wow, I didn't, think about every time we have a conversation and one of us says something that the other one didn't realize before. It's like, I've learned something new. I've added, and there's a sense of satisfaction, which also, makes you feel happier. So I
mm,
think curiosity, as part of the, getting into the flow state, and Csikszentmihalyi shows that people who regularly enter the flow state live happier lives, right? And more
mm,
productive and more successful in their own way. And so that's one area where I think curiosity is really important, to recognize that it helps get you in a flow state, and it also really contributes to more happiness in life.
mm. I I was thinking when I don't know if this is correct or wrong, but when you mentioned the flow state and that terms of focus that you need to and that you get into, I'm I'm also considering another aspect of curiosity and maybe thinking more about kids. If you're that curious about things, isn't it difficult to keep that focus on one thing because your attention span kind of gets drawn away to different stuff all the time? So, I mean, that balance of is can you talk about a focused curiosity and I don't know, spontaneous curiosity, and is there a balance there to channel it? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think as we get older, we gain the ability. Just think about some of the research that's been done about kids, around willpower, and how they develop. There is the marshmallow experiment, and
Mm,
they looked at those kids years later when the ones that had the willpower to resist the marshmallow were able to be more successful at university, or a higher percentage of them went to university, and so on.
right.
So I think it's similar to that. We develop this ability focus and concentrate that curiosity. So we have a sort of a topic or area of interest that we pursue and see where that leads to. Not just, I think also when you are young, there's so many new things that can take your attention, whereas as you get older, there's a lot more things that are just familiar to you, and you're not as easily pulled away or distracted by them. Although, we our level of attention, our attention span is apparently decreasing with our digital devices and all the other things that stimuli that we have around us. But I would say that it definitely is something that improves and increases as you get older. As you move from childhood to adolescence to your young adulthood, I think those are skills that you learn to adapt, learn to focus more. Kids' attention spans are short. You know that better than me. You've got how old are your kids?
9 and 6. Yeah.
And do you see a difference between the 6 and the 9-year-old?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see that during their whole sort of growing up period from year to year, I guess. But I think it can also be very individual. And in that sense, I was also wondering, is it a personality trait or not? I mean, do you have different levels of curiosity in some individuals and more than less, or is it something that you just consciously have to develop?
I think it's a lot like creativity. It's we all have this innate ability to be creative in some way, whether it's problem solving or some creative expression. And I think that curiosity is a similar thing. It's something innately in us, and it diminishes with lack of use. Maybe I would speculate, but I think that you can. I know it can be conditioned out of us, right? And that's sort of the next thing I want to really talk about is how our modern management system. So to take it to the business side of things, but also for personal life, when people, I heard a statistic recently that, more than 70% of people are not really engaged at work. They're not fully engaged. And so what does that do for your own life satisfaction, happiness in life? And what does that do for your productivity at the workplace? And I was talking to someone this week. We were discussing, a really awful, in my view, a really awful management style where they have all these tracking systems where people, every email, how many emails you've written is tracked, and like everything that you do is quantified. So you're constantly under pressure, and you're constantly being observed. And so where's there room for creativity in there? Because if you're that observed, you're totally afraid of making mistakes. And all you're going to do is follow the process, right? And, maybe for some types of work, that's exactly what's needed. But in this area, it was more to do with sales and marketing, and that is not that doesn't help you build any relationships. That doesn't help you be creative and come up with new ideas. Sure. Yeah. And so when I think about the kind of management practices that are in place that are very stifling for people's engagement and their curiosity, curiosity is going to help them come up with new and different ways of addressing problems, improving business, improving your own life, right? And I think if you that conditioning that you get through, even through when I look at even science and academia has become very rigid and structured, and I think back to Maslow commented on this, where it used to be science was driven by this sense of wonder, right? The sense of awe. And now it's completely devoid of emotions, and it's, we're just checking the facts. And obviously that's important, but that sense of curiosity, I would hope that that's still alive and well in academia and science, but a lot of it has just been pragmatic and just following a very rational process. And I think we're emotional beings, and curiosity is part of what drives that emotion. And so I think that's a concern that I have, where society and where our institutions start to become far more rigid. And even the times when you look at the times we're living in, where things become very, this is what you're supposed to think, and we're almost being split into groups where even if you look at the COVID situation, you mentioned that you got your second vaccinations, but now we're being split into the vaxxers. And somebody said to me, do you know any anti-vaxxers? It's like I find that so awful that we're putting people, we're labeling them and putting them in categories. And then I think back to a conversation that I had last year. This was when Trump was still the president in the UK, in the US, and there was a group of Americans that here in Hamburg that we were having, not all Americans, but we were having this conversation. And I said, I once in a while I'll look at a few clips from Fox News, and oh no, you shouldn't. That's all misinformation. It's like, well, I'm curious what people. I'm a very liberal-minded person, so I'm curious what people who may be more conservative are thinking, and so. I wanted to say, what are you worried about? It that I'm so naive, I'm going to start believing, I can't even expose myself to anything other than sort of what's being discussed in my circle of friends or my bubble. And so that's where I think curiosity will lead you to be interested in what people who have a different viewpoint to you have. And this is one of the great benefits of travel. This is why I love to travel, to experience new cultures, because I'm curious about how people are different and how people are similar, and so all of that is driven by curiosity. And so if you have this kind of authoritarian, no, this is the way you're supposed to think and everybody else is bad, and you have I also recently heard about this from Jonathan Haidt was talking about the myth of pure evil. We classify these things and make them. We have to be afraid of exposing ourselves to certain knowledge or certain experiences, and so I think those are some of the things that condition us to reduce our curiosity and to let go of that. I mean, and the sense that we already know it all, and that like we've already experienced so much in life, there's not much new to learn, and I think those are all factors that limit our curiosity and limit our potential to grow and have new experiences in life.
Yeah. Well, let me agree and disagree. Maybe.
Sure.
I mean, because um, when you talk about curiosity, a lot of people talk about, just you have to have an open mind, and then then you can be curious, and that's very easy to say. But as I agree with that part of, the world. Maybe I think we talked about this before, but maybe in some way social media is driving this polarization of for and against whatever it is, right?
Yeah, plus the algorithms just feed you with information that's that feeds into your confirmation bias, right?
Yeah, and it's it's a comfortable state, this is what I think, this is what I believe, etc. So having that curiosity, and I mean that's one of the great things about coaching, that you're trained to ask open-ended questions, to seek for perspectives, to seek for different views, and trying to understand it. And I was maybe I've talked about this before as well, but I was a part of this of a theory U education, and one of the assignments is to empathy walk, so to find an individual who has totally different perspectives or views on things with you, and have a lunch or a walk with this person, and try to understand perspectives and views. And I think those kind of exercises are just very beneficial. It's really interesting. And it opens up, it takes away judgment and just opens up for curiosity, so it's interesting, why are you thinking that, what are the benefits, etc. So you're actually, I mean, in these conversations, it becomes a coaching practice. But I think that's a wonderful way to practice curiosity, and also I think one of the reasons why coaching has become so popular with just all kinds of people, I guess, because people are willing. There are a lot of people willing to search for different perspectives and open and realizing that we can't view the world in black and white. There are a lot of gray areas, and we need to understand it's very complex, right? And this is where I maybe don't agree with you. Of course, there are still a lot of institutions and companies that are stuck in more controlling management systems and systems overall. But I think both and you and I can see a big shift and big push towards a more, well, the world is getting flatter. If I put it that way, the
Mm-hmm.
world is getting flatter in the sense of hierarchies, etc. Meaning that there's a lot more difficult to make a career, at least if we're looking in the traditional sense of going upwards. We don't have that many spaces left, so the only place to go is to go wide, and then you have to learn new stuff, and you have to cooperate, and you have to, take on new assignments and learn new, and then to survive in this kind of landscape. I mean, we have to be curious, otherwise, because that position that used to be doing just one thing, that's not going to exist anymore.
Okay, but my challenge to you then is that curiosity driving us, or just this, are we
Yeah.
learning out of necessity because, well, I've got to stay up on, I mean, how are you engaged in the things you're learning because there's a fear of falling behind, or is it because that you're really curious about, well, I didn't know that and I want to learn more about it. And
Mm.
what's the motivation, right? And
Yeah, fair point.
mm,
Difficult to say, but in the long term, what I think what will happen is for I don't know if this is Darwinism or whatever now, but to survive in this kind of context, it's necessary to develop a sense of curiosity, or to utilize this curiosity is a necessity for survival.
mm. I think my both my educational experience and my experience in life in general is that when I've been the sense that I have to do things, or I, that these the compulsory things, and I have done lots of things that you just have to do in order to get what you want, but I was always more effective. I got more out of it, and basically was able to incorporate it and pass it on to other people far better when it was driven by curiosity. And that's a big distinction. You referred to the whole, why coaching is becoming more interesting to people because, asking these questions. And I think that's a big distinction for me between, people don't often understand, well, what's the difference between a therapy and a coach. And even working here in Germany, there's a lot of psychologists who are moving into coaching because they, for whatever reason, maybe it makes them more money or whatever, with business clients. But
Hmm.
I think that the big difference for me, and I think therapy is very valuable, and psychologists, I've participated in a lot of that myself, but I think the difference is, coaches don't make a diagnosis. They
Hmm.
don't go, this sounds like a typical case of, and so that's where I agree with you. Coaching is it's about, I wonder where this is coming from, and asking those questions to try and dig deeper and find out what the source is. Maybe it's a belief, or maybe it's some past experience that's led to a belief, and just, or maybe it's just some something that hasn't been properly thought through, and so on. So I think asking those questions is, my philosophy as a coach has always been, the answers are within all of us. So the person that I'm coaching, we're going to find that answer within them. I'm not going to be able to provide it for them. I'm just going to try and help guide them or accompany them to that place to find the answer. And so that's, again, I think curiosity is what drives me in coaching, but
Hmm.
even in business, even the things that I've been successful in business, it's been, oh, I wonder if we did this, I wonder what would happen. Like, I wonder, and it's funny because I think it's Stephen King who talks about all of his books have come from this question of, I wonder what if this happened, I wonder what would happen, and I think that is where the curiosity drives us to so many new and interesting places. And I think
Yeah.
even if you look at someone like Elon Musk and his desire to explore space, I'm sure that so much of his the way you become innovative and disruptive in creating change, it's got to have a high degree of curiosity in order to get you there. I don't think
Yeah.
things like following strict processes, which are really important once you get to sort of wanting some consistency and so on. But in order to make those first breakthroughs or discover new things, you need a high level of curiosity. It's
Mm.
my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely and interesting. I've also been thinking about what you mentioned a few of those cues, like um, in language, in coaching and in facilitation. I've noticed in myself that I often use the frame, I'm curious what that means or whatever it is, and I know that what's his name? Benjamin Zander, he was talking about it. He's like, he also, when something unexpected happens, he always is, that's interesting. And nurturing these kind of lingual cues into your language can actually trigger a little bit of curiosity. So asking those questions, well, what if, or what would be possible? Um, I'm curious, that's interesting. Tell me more. These kind of lingual cues can really push that behavior and open up more perspectives. So that's something that I really try to nourish a lot when I'm just in my behaviors, I guess.
That's interesting because I hadn't even thought of it from a communication standpoint. Think about what curiosity does to a conversation. When you're showing interest, how much more someone that you're
Yeah.
talking to will open up, and or when you trigger the curiosity in them, like, did you know? And all of a sudden get them curious. If we could run our education system with, imagine if kids are so innately wanting to learn, and that curiosity to learn, and it seems to with some of our and I don't want to whitewash it. I think they're obviously really, education is really important, and there are lots of good things, but I think we need to ask ourselves: are we conditioning our kids to just to follow one path and give up some of their curiosity? I think if we can engage that the curiosity we had as kids, and we can maintain a certain level of it throughout life, it'll make
Mm,
us happier, and it'll make us more productive and more knowledgeable and more
mm,
able to learn. So, but I think to your point about the communication is really important. If we can kind of encourage that curiosity in someone else, or express our curiosity to the point that it really helps someone open up and want to share all of their knowledge with you, I think that's a huge benefit.
yeah. And it's also, I mean, what we're getting into is maybe more curiosity in other people. It doesn't have to be, I mean, when we talk about curiosity, yeah, I'm interested in, engineering solutions or ideas, but there's so many parts of it, and just being curious in other people and an individual and taking an interest will lead to so many other things as well.
Yeah, I think if you look at marketing practices, like people, you'll have them, you'll try and convince them because, well, the majority of people think this, or to get them to, some call to action through, being an authoritative. But I find the best bits of marketing are the ones that make you curious. I want to know more. I find
Yeah.
some of those really successful, the things that the marketing doesn't even tell you the whole story. It just draws you in
Mm,
enough to be curious, and so I think there's so many areas in life where where applied correctly, curiosity just has a lot of benefits.
mm.
And so, yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I think you had something
No,
else.
that's a great example. I just I could immediately think about a marketing ad, that was everybody, what is this? And becomes the talk of the town kind of thing. And it's very, very smart. Yeah, for
Waking
sure.
curiosity. I
Mm,
think some good examples of how curiosity is diminished, and you probably have your own. But I think back to, like, if you look at someone in the early days of sort of production, Henry Ford. curiosity for him was an absolute disaster. He wanted people to work on his assembly line and just do what they were told, and not be curious. The innovation would come from him and his engineers, but people, and we. That's like those kind of examples where a lot of our modern day management practices come from. And so if the way you manage people is based on not stay in your lane, and just follow the process. There's if you can engage a degree, and this is why sort of agile management practices I think are the way of the future, and this sort of old school hierarchies where people look upward for the answers rather than being curious and pursuing their own kind of solutions, makes for a happier workplace and makes for a more effective and innovative workplace. And so I think people really need to think about that if you're in a leadership or a managerial role, or if you're in a job that you used to love and you've kind of you've lost your enthusiasm for it, finding ways to just get curious about different things about, and a lot of it is just because everything's become so automated, and think about how curiosity helps generate new motivation, right? And I think if you can find things to be curious about, it will do wonders for your motivation and your happiness.
Yeah. I mean, just to go back to where you started first, I mean, in terms of certain aspect of organizations, and I mean, there's red tape or there are certain lines that you can't cross, and there you can't have any, there's no room for curiosity, what's when it comes to safety or certain very rudimentary important life important things,
Yeah, if
you don't push that button, don't be curious about that.
Exactly.
Bad things will happen.
Absolutely. I think there are areas where you don't want curiosity. That old saying, curiosity killed the cat. Absolutely there are limits or there are boundaries that need to be in place. And I think if a doctor's doing surgery on me, I don't want him to get curious. Oh, I wonder if I did this. I want him to follow his experience and the things that have worked. So yeah, I think experimentation and curiosity are good in the right moments. I think the point that I'm trying to make most of all today is that in life we're especially as we get older, we're lacking a lot of curiosity. Certainly there are areas that that can lead you into trouble and cause problems. Yeah. But I think we're not lacking, or it's not that we've got too much curiosity in the world. I honestly think we have too little these days.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I mean, and we touched upon that already, but we're creating these kind of organizations and places of work where you can foster curiosity and encourage it, and encourage this kind of what's possible, what if, that kind of mentality. And yeah, with of course there's a lot of ambiguity. You don't know what's there, but that's part of the charm, I guess.
Yeah, and it can lead to a lack of productivity if you spend too much of your time on just following your curiosity and not getting the things done that need to be done. Yeah. So it's just like allotting yourself some creative time, or if you're trying to solve problems, having time allocated to that. And this is when we were talking about motivation. I think this came up. There are certain companies that will, in terms of the autonomy piece, right? There are certain companies that will let you then. I think there was an Australian company that had that allowed sort of 20% of your time to work on the projects that you were interested in. In other words, that allowed you to follow your curiosity, and then 80% was, these are the things that have to get done. So if you can find time in your week or your day to be curious, I think that's very helpful. And if organizations would allow for a degree of curiosity, so a degree of autonomy to pursue the things that you are curious about, you will engage with people more. You'll have a more motivated workforce, and you're going to come up with things you never knew that were out there to discover.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's that's the other part of it. From a personal perspective, what can we do to foster our curiosity? What do you do?
I think asking questions is important. Not being afraid to getting out of your comfort zone to some degree, and not being afraid to engage with things. We get so caught up in our habits and our routines, and we don't look left and right. And I think if we don't take everything at face value, and ask questions, and look for the questions within you. Like, I think sometimes just how many people have had a great idea and they're like, somebody else has probably thought of that already, or it's probably already been done, right? So we have these inner mental processes that shoot down our curiosity right away. So we don't even get beyond that first stage. So I think having an open enough mind and disengaging your inner critic as much as you can, so that you allow yourself a certain amount of time to be. I think curiosity and creativity go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
For sure.
And so if you make time for yourself to be creative, then you're automatically allowing yourself some time to be curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think about some individuals in my social network that I see as really curious, and it's the breadth of interests and hobbies they have. It's great. Like, let's go star watching, or let's go bird watching, or let's practice karate, or just, and it can be stuff that are totally have no relation with each other at all. I mean, sometimes you think about certain individuals that might be really sporty, so just doing that kind of stuff, while others are more on the artistic side. But having that width of, I'm terrible at dancing, but I'm curious to know what that would be, and just sign up for a salsa dancing course, or what. But that's that part of getting out of your comfort zone and just be willing to try something new, and maybe tag along someone who who have a different interest in you, and see what you can learn. I find that really interesting. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Like, if it's not fun, well, then it's not your thing. But there's always something you can learn. Right.
Yeah, and again, it's about knowing your boundaries, but also leaving yourself enough space to. I think people at a certain age will start to say, well, that's not me, or that's not. And if you're not willing to step a little bit out of your comfort zone, then that's detrimental to your curiosity. But really leaving some space for that, and I think that's a really good example. You find curious people are always trying new things, and other people will go, no, I like my routine. I like the I like the stability. I like the predictability of my life. And I think especially those people need to be encouraged. I think it's helpful for those people to be encouraged to take some time to be curious about something new, especially about other people. I think if you are curious about other people, then there's less prejudgment. There's less, making these assumptions about, what other people, other cultures, other ways of thinking. We can engage better with each other, and we can be more inclusive that way. You hear a lot of, in businesses, there's a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion. But then there's also this political correctness, and you're only allowed to think in this bandwidth. And then a lot of people promoting the diversity and inclusion are very liberal, but they aren't willing to look at, well, what's the perspective of someone with a conservative mindset? Because we need both those mindsets in society. And I was listening to someone talk about how you have these people who tend to be more conservative are more about the protecting the group. They're looking for dangers, and they're looking for things that could harm the group, and so at the cost of the individual, they will they will do what's important for the whole, whereas more liberal-minded people tend to be more about compassion for the individual, and so you can see how both perspectives have benefit. And if you're not curious about if you're so entrenched in your own opinion about the world and you're not curious about, well, I wonder why that person thinks that way, even if you find that opinion abhorrent, like, where are they coming from? Where's it? Maybe someone has had a traumatic experience, and that's what's led them to their thinking in life. And I think having a degree of curiosity about other people will help you understand and be more compassionate, more more cooperative, more able to connect with people, rather than being so this is my way of seeing the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I read some article recently that they were talking about emotional intelligence and curiosity, and I'm thinking in terms of empathy. How that it's if you're curious, it's much easier to empathize with other people's opinions, etc. So yeah, avoiding that sort of digging our own trench of this is where I stand and I'm not going to move, which which we all probably do to some extent. It's very easy to fall into that trap. So yeah, it's I mean, fostering that sense of curiosity, it's very opening, and yeah, I see a lot of opportunities in terms of happiness, but relations, perspectives, yeah,
Yeah.
lot of positive side effects.
Especially when we're living in times where people are very polarized on certain topics, and
Yeah.
I think you're not going to convince everybody else of your opinion. I think you're not going to find good ways to engage with people until you're curious about their perspective. And when you come at it with a sense of curiosity, and it doesn't mean that you need to agree with anyone else, or that you're betraying your own values, but curiosity is important if we're going to. We're so reliant on each other. I mean, the interdependence, especially in this. There's nobody that I'm sure there are very few people in the world, but there's no one that I know of that could survive without the systems we've put in place and without the help of other people. We all rely on each other, and so if we want to have healthy, productive societies, I think curiosity about how other people see the world and how other people think is extremely important.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, that's a very high level take on it, actually. I mean, I agree. It's great. But I guess I'm thinking more curiosity. I'm thinking more of it from an individual point of view, what's good for me. And it's just in terms of happiness and how you choose to live your life. I'm very willing. I mean, and maybe it's who I am and my personal values, but for me, curiosity is extremely important to learn new things, to get new experiences, and get as much richness out of life as possible.
Yeah, but I think one of the big reasons for me wanting to have this topic today for anyone listening is because I really want to encourage people to find ways to engage with their curiosity. I think much like when we look at our parasympathetic and our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, when you get into the sympathetic nervous system's response to the fight or flight, we find that a lot of other things shut down, right? So including our immune system and our reproductive, like all of these essential things long term are put on hold to deal with immediate concerns. And so I think if you use that as kind of a metaphor for if we are so worried about the immediate fears that we have, that we don't take any time to be curious, we're losing out on something. So if we're constantly under stress because we're trying to get to that success, or we're trying to get to these goals that we're reaching, or we're just trying to deal with day-to-day problems and the frustrations that I'm dealing with today, or the problems that I've got to overcome today, if we don't take the time to step back, regroup, and add an element of curiosity, I think we're going to have a hard time solving our problems. And I even think to someone like Albert Einstein, when he was in the middle of a problem, he didn't go harder at it. He didn't sit down and do more equations. He took a walk. He took a walk in nature. That's how he made better decisions. Or he played his violin. He opened the door for some creative flow. And I think, again, when you open the door for creativity, you automatically will help engage some curiosity, is my view. So I agree with you on a personal level. It's really important, and that was one of my main motivations for wanting to have this topic today, is because I think for individuals to foster more curiosity in life will only make our society better. So, as with everything, I try to think systemically as much as possible, and then you always go from the big picture, zooming into the to a very focused or on an individual level, and then looking at relationships and so on. And so I think curiosity is the same thing. I think there's an overall effect that it can have on the world if we engage things with more, even, when people talk about there's so much misinformation, and now there's a lot of censorship on the internet because they're afraid that, there's too much misinformation is getting out there, and so on. But I think that if people are just taking everything at face value, curiosity will help you ask the right questions, or at least ask questions, right? So if we're just taking everything that we're confronted with at face value, we can be led down the wrong path. But I think curiosity is the solution to engage and have discourse and debate. I think healthy debate is the solution for misinformation, not censorship.
Yeah, just you put another interesting perspective. I didn't really consider that, and maybe that's not empathetic of me. But considering if you as an individual are feeling like, I'm not curious. I don't have that luxury. I don't have the time to be curious. I don't have a interest to be curious. It's and maybe there's physical obstacles in the way. I'm not sure. How do you tackle that? And because it's easy to say, just go and be curious, and everything's going to be great. It works for me, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of advice people have. Like, do something every day that scares you, or try something new, once a week. Sure, those are all good things, but I think everybody can find their own way to be curious and to try new things. It's about a mindset. I think cultivating. I think if you make a practice of it, we talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is also something that's a practice. If you don't practice mindfulness or meditation or or courtesy or good manners, if you don't practice these things, they will fade away. And the same thing goes for curiosity. So taking some time, giving yourself some space to be curious, and like you say, too much curiosity. I mean, you can spend all day following different YouTube trails and watching videos all day. That's not necessarily where curiosity is going to benefit you, but just making sure that you're giving yourself space. And I think in academia now, people are so specialized. They're so centralized, and they don't even see the connections between other things. They don't look at things systemically, and they have to be so focused in order to be successful in their field that they can't afford to be curious about other things. And I think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of I do think there is a lot of efforts of sort of cross scientific projects, etc. Because everybody sees the benefits of it. But
Hmm.
for sure, I mean, there's the the system is and the structure is quite traditional in terms of hierarchy. And if you want to climb that ladder, yeah, and for a lot of academics, you have a call, right? I want to be the It's like being an MD, I guess. You have a call for being a doctor. It's what you a little bit what you are, and you want to be an expert on something, so you have to focus, devote an enormous effort of time to do that. Um, but yeah, so to take on that curious mindset or to experiment with curiosity, maybe it involves a bit of risk taking for sure. And I mean, that has to be balanced for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that was what you were just saying there. It made me think that curiosity also requires a degree of courage, right?
mm,
Especially thinking about academia, where think about someone who has a very bold new idea. Throughout history, those kind of people have been ridiculed, and even to the point that their careers are jeopardized. Even see it now. If you have a contrary
yeah,
view to the
or being
mainstream.
burnt alive, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Sure.
that's even worse, obviously. But it does take depending on the situation, it can take a degree of courage, and to go, yeah, I'm curious about this, even though no one else is. That takes some self confidence and some courage, I guess, if you're going to discuss it with others and make it public. But our lives are very public now. The world that we live in, and the digital universe, and so on. But yeah, I think courage, probably willing to take some risks. That's all part of it.
Mm, yeah. And another thing that really struck me with, I forgot exactly what you said that made me think about it, but I've always had a real beef with this thing that, yeah, you have to find your passion. And if you just find your passion, what is it? There is probably a fake quote, but some people say, if you find some people say that Confucius said that if you just find your passion in life, you never have to work another day in your life, or something like that. And I've always had a little bit of a beef with that. Like passion. I don't feel passionate about something and maybe I felt I was really passionate about something for a period 10 years ago, but it's not my passion anymore. I find new passions, or I don't know what if it qualifies as a passion. It's an interest or a hobby or something that I think is interesting. But am I passionate about it? I don't know. So for me, that to drive curiosity to that extent, that yeah, if you just be passionate, or be passionate about cooking, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
For me, this passion is overrated in that sense. But I think if you're passionate about something to the degree so you can devote everything, fantastic. That's great. But it doesn't work for everybody. And for me personally, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't. Maybe it's a personality thing or something. But for me, it's more about clusters of interest or creativity that drive me forward.
Absolutely. I think when you talk about passion, it's very much tied. It's an emotional state, right? And you can have different varying degrees of passion, I guess. I'm far more interested in encouraging people to follow their curiosity, and so I think, yeah, if you're passionate about what you do, then it doesn't feel like work, and then thus that then you'll never work another day in your life. I think that's not a one size fits all. I don't think that there are people who don't get as emotional, don't get as excited, and even the people who do, they have their peaks and valleys, right? So tying things to emotions is difficult because emotions are volatile, right? So
Mm.
I think if you can pursue your curiosity, and that this comes right back to the whole flow discussion, because it's flow is about finding a challenge, so it has to be a task that challenges you. So you can't just easily do it, but it can't be so challenging that you don't make any progress. And it needs to awaken some degree of curiosity in you to move forward. And when you have that combination, that will help get you focused, and that will help get you into the flow state. So it's when people get so curious about something, they lose all sense of time and they become so engaged in that one activity that they have this very focused practice. So the flow comes from when the experience that people talk about when they're maybe playing an instrument or playing a sport or doing something they're so fully engaged in that they completely lose themselves in the activity. And that's in sports we call it, getting into the flow, and I think musicians talk about it as well. And an element of that, at least according to Csikszentmihalyi, and according to my own experience, an element of that is curiosity. Curiosity helps you get into that state. I don't think that you don't just through sheer will get into the flow state. I don't think you can. Okay, I'm gonna face this challenge head on. I think knowing what's on the other side is naturally curious, right? What happens when I break through here? What happens when if I can make it to that next level, what will that experience be like?
Wondering, not knowing.
Sense of wonder. That's again from Maslow, a very wise man, and he came up with his hierarchy of needs, through this curiosity about the human condition, and so this sense of wonder, and I think it was a very astute observation to go, science and everything we did to learn how to manipulate the world or to progress in this world was driven in many cases by the sense of wonder, and then it was exploited or it was manifested itself in different ways, but a lot of great things have come out of that.
Yeah, and a lot of bad things have happened, tried to control and stifle that wonder because you don't want people to I mean, historically speaking, you don't want people to wonder what happens if...
it's the devil's work.
Exactly. You should be burned alive.
Yeah. So anyway, look, I think curiosity it's important to make a room in your life for it. And I think it has innumerable benefits for your happiness, your productivity. So maybe we can wrap it up there. I think, I guess I never asked you, because you're also a musician. How do you find curiosity in your life? Like how do you see it manifesting in your life?
Well, in a lot of ways, I see myself as having a lot of interest in hobbies, I guess, so pursuing these, wanting to explore, but also something that we didn't talk about, but taking on new challenges. I wonder what it would be like to do this. So, for instance, I did a half Ironman triathlon last was it 2 weeks ago, a week ago, and when I finished that, I was like, oh, what's the next thing? I want to try something new. I want to put on a new challenge, and so putting up new objectives that are, but preferably something that is semi-new. It might be attached to something that I'm interested in, but I haven't tried before. So actually tomorrow I'm gonna me and my son, we're gonna do our first swim run. Never done that before, so that's something that I'm really looking forward to. So maybe that's one thing, taking on new challenges and see with new people as well.
Yeah.
We've never done anything like that together, so that'll be fun.
Great. Yeah. Look, I'm the same way. And when you talked about passion, I'm extremely passionate about my own personal development and helping and fostering it in other people. So I am passionate about the work that I do. And that doesn't mean like I'm always at a 10 in terms of my emotional level, but I do feel a lot of passion for that. And that's why, but I think that passion is fueled by my curiosity. That's why I spend, a couple of weeks ago, I said, I was giving this I was doing a workshop, and I made the comment. I do this stuff in my spare time, and they're like, we could help you get some new hobbies. But I'm so curious about the human condition, and even though like I don't. I'm not that scientific, so I try and understand the science as best I can. The neuroscience and so on, and I don't ever claim to be an expert. But I'm just so curious about it all. Even look, I'm not a quantum physicist, but I'm curious about quantum physics, and some people just roll their eyes about it. But I'm so interested about the human condition and all the factors and what makes it work, and so it makes life so much more fulfilling, right? Than just going through it and when I'm finished work, to just distract myself or to sedate myself with in the ways that people habitually tend to do. And so I think it's far more rewarding to pursue your curiosity than it is to pursue just a distraction.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's totally different kind of motivator. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good. So, look, let's wrap it up here. I think for me, the thing that I really want, I hope that we've expressed throughout our kind of conversation and where the winding road that it usually takes with the two of us, that all the benefits that curiosity has. And ways to find it in life. So it'll make you happier. It'll make you more motivated and more engaged in your personal relationships, in your workplace. And so I can only encourage people to find ways to be more curious. What about you? Any other tips from your side?
No, I think we covered the tips. I'm more thinking like, I wonder, because it's always inspiring to talk about those things. So I'm thinking, what can I learn today, or is it something else that I can challenge myself with today? Yeah, I mean, in a good way. So I'm feeling that way, and I'm sure I'm going to do something about it. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to find something. And hopefully someone else listening to this is finding the same sensation, and then that's great,
Yeah. I don't think for you and I, curiosity is such a challenge, but I think the fact that it's made such a positive change in my life. I mean, in my early 20s, like as a teenager, I had phases of curiosity in my 20s, but I find I'm a much better learner now than I was back then, because of the fact that I'm far more curious about things. I've opened myself up to so many different possibilities now that I think I'll continue to learn. And I think about someone like Noam Chomsky, who?
Sorry, who?
Noam Chomsky. He's I think he's written more than 100 books, and he's a linguist by education. He worked at MIT he was a professor at MIT for many, many years, and he's in his early 90s. He's still giving talks. He's still interviews. He's very politically active. So there's a lot of political discourse, and I mean that guy's curiosity can never have been turned off, because he's still going strong in his early 90s, still wanting to share his knowledge, but still learning new things. And so I think that's a great example of what curiosity can do, and that it doesn't have to end ever in your life.
So I guess he found his passion, huh?
I think I'm sure he's been living his passion for a long time.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
but certainly he's activated. He continues to maintain his curiosity. So if you've lost some of your curiosity, anyone listening, if you've lost some curiosity, spend some time. Give some space. Ask yourself some questions. Be curious. And it'll improve your life. And if you find yourself still very curious, make sure you find ways to maintain that as you get older, and don't let your conditioning and your habits get in the way of that. What do you think? Is that a good place to wrap it up?
Yeah, I guess that's a good place to wrap it up. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, look, I hope anyone listening found the conversation interesting, and it made you curious about new things, because that's gonna be what helps us solve the problems we face in life, and it's gonna keep life interesting. So, Okay, Toby, thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Peter.
It's always engaging. Thanks for letting me rant. I think I went on a bit of a monologue a couple times there, but
I guess I had my share of not ranting. I don't know.
no, not rants, but I get off on tangents. But anyway, so I thank everyone for their patience in letting me say my piece, but I hope it was engaging. So, all right, until next time. Toby, have a great couple of weeks until we speak again, and everyone else, thanks for listening and for tuning in, and I hope it was helpful.
See you soon.
Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.